So what's the books you're doing?
So an old friend of mine is working advocacy on the island for improving people's ability or enabling them to be able to travel around without cars. Now that's a mission I've been on for 5 years in Greater Manchester, where we've put in a plan for a 1,800 mile network. It's going to cost £1.5 billion in 10 years to deliver. So we wanted to see if there's anything learning there that might be useful in the Isle of Man. So that's why we're here.
And what similarities are there between, because obviously we look at it and say we're quite more rural than Manchester is, but what can you see just looking at the island that are similar?
Well, there's masses of similarities because Greater Manchester is effectively 10 conurbations. In a lot of cases it's villages, and then people move between the villages, if you like. So it's very similar in that respect. So the context is slightly different, slightly hillier here, but essentially it's people moving around, and people will do the easiest thing. While it's driving, then people will drive, and that brings massive problems with it in terms of congestion, pollution, health, lots of different things. And when you consider that the majority of those journeys are less than 2 kilometres, then that's both a little bit embarrassing in cars, but also quite exciting. Just look how little that you would have to change to make a difference to all those massive issues that we face. And that's what we've been working on in Greater Manchester, and that's what people are thinking about in the Isle of Man now.
Does that realistically mean in the sense that while we have to make active travel easy, we also have to make cars a bit more difficult?
I think you can start by making sure that you give people what they need to get out of a car. Bike lanes in particular, people assume they're for cyclists, and they're not. They're for drivers, because it's the drivers that have got to choose to change behaviour if we're going to get any kind of change. So they need to see something out the window that is at least as attractive, easy as what I'm doing now, or why would I get out? So you focus on giving people an alternative, so enable them, don't encourage them, enable them to not have to drive. And kids that you don't have to take them to school, they can get there under their own steam. And if that means that you take some space from other modes to make that happen, then that's worth doing.
And you're meeting with the government body here as well to sort of explain this to them and see what we can learn from that?
Yeah, the last 24 hours has been really understanding what the Isle of Man wants to be. What is it? What do you want this place to look like in 10 years, in 20 years? And only when you define that can you start to go down into the detail and look at what will get us there. And that's happening now, which is quite exciting. And you've got some massive opportunities here. You haven't saturated your streets with cars yet. You've got a bus, you have control of the whole bus network, which you can crank up and make it more attractive and more frequent and easier and cheaper to use. So you've got some brilliant assets here. It just depends what you want to create, how you bring them together.
Just on that, does increased use of public transport fall into this in Manchester as well, and getting people out of cars, and something that then could be translated here?
Well, it's the same thing. It's all about making the right choice the easiest choice, because if it isn't, I'm not going to do it. And that's how human beings are built. And once you embrace that fact, you start to do things differently and start to think about, well, how do I make the right choice the easiest choice? And it all falls into place. But public transport, our mission is to connect it all up. So if you want to use a hire bike, you tap in with your card or your app, and then you use that to get to the train or the bus stop. And then you park that up, and then you tap onto the bus with the same card, and it's capped at the end of the day, say £10. And so that's what we're heading towards, and make it the easiest thing for people to mix and match and to not have to use a car. Because if it isn't easy, I'm not changing.
And you said about, you want to see what the island wants to be like. Is this a sense that you've got that people do want to see this change on the island?
I think there's lots of visions about pieces, but when it gets brought together as one pattern, we want the Isle of Man to be a place where tourism returns at scale. We want it to be a place that people choose to come and bring up families and live here for life. We want to use our natural assets, the fact that it's an island surrounded by a beautiful coastline. And once you've decided, you've painted that picture, that's what we want it to be in 20 years, and we want it to be carbon neutral. Then all your choices, then you start to drill down what makes that up. And nobody flocks towards places that have got great parking or loads of roads, or people like space to sit and linger and chat, and kids can walk places and you feel they're safe enough to let them. So I think everybody would agree on all the elements, but if you can bring them together in one vision for the Isle of Man, then everybody knows that they're working towards the same thing.
Just slightly away from this, just more on a sport angle, you're obviously best known for cycling, so we've got, the Island has produced our own fair share of elite athletes. Are you impressed by that? Just how many people come from here? And
you've got, success breeds success. So you've effectively created your own club where, you know, people come and when you get some of the best in the world, the likes of Mark Cavendish and Pete Kenyon, then everybody's training with them and they've got a gold medal yardstick week in, week out, and that makes a big difference. And it also shows the people in this area that it's possible. It's worth investing a big chunk of your life in being a sportsman because it's possible, and there's the proof. And you bring that together and you put it somewhere like this with a great environment, then you're going to breed champions.